Gildan Media, a division of Recorded Books, presents Access to Asia, your multicultural guide to building trust, inspiring respect, and creating long-lasting business relationships. By Sharon Schweitzer, J.D., with Liz Alexander, Ph.D. Forward by Bob Weisfuss. Narrated by Joanna Perrin. Forward. As the founder of ETIM International, which has been associated with the work of Professor Gert Hofstede for the past 30 years, we have long emphasized that when it comes to national culture differences, culture only exists by comparison. We human beings have much in common, but we are also all unique. Culture in this regard describes the differences that exist between groups, be they nations, regions, or organizations. When visiting the 10 Asian countries showcased in this book, as a potential business partner or business colleague, or because you have been seconded abroad for a longer period of time, Sharon Schweitzer's Access to Asia will be of considerable benefit. Adopt the advice offered within, and it will empower you as a global professional by helping you understand the breadth and depth of successful intercultural relationships. We are all busy people, often feeling that we have little time to focus on strategy when tactical matters are pressing. Sharon Schweitzer demonstrates that she understands this. Not only is Access to Asia packed full of information you may not have come across elsewhere, those nuggets are presented in a readily accessible way. Ms. Schweitzer comprehensively covers the building blocks needed in order to get a true sense of each of these 10 important Asian markets through the country basics sections. She has gone even further, however, by amassing considerable on-the-ground insights related to 8 important questions. In many books covering the differences between values patterns of different cultures, many of the most important do's and don'ts are overlooked. This is not the case with Access to Asia, which is why I highly recommend this book to everybody who truly desires to build trust, inspire respect, and create long-lasting business relationships in this important region of the world. Bob Weisfuss, Managing Partner of the Hofstede, Helsinki, Finland. Introduction. In the world of high-speed motor brands, dominate Formula One and NASCAR. Both require skill, strategy, and intense focus. In all other respects, they couldn't be more different. Formula One is the racing equivalent of a Louis Vuitton store, high class with European roots and international appeal. Formula One races, known as Grand Prix, showcase technologically sophisticated single-seat, purpose-built cars, driven by men like Prost, Villeneuve, and Schumacher, with engines designed by world-class talent at Alfa Romeo, Ferrari, Maserati, Lotus, and Mercedes-Benz. The only 2 U.S. Americans who have won in Formula One's 62-year history are Phil Hill in 1961 and Mario Andretti in 1978. NASCAR, the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, on the other hand, is an all-American phenomenon whose heroes have first names such as Denny, JJ, and Kyle. Stock cars are almost indistinguishable from those you'd find in a Chevrolet, Ford, or Dodge showroom. In contrast to Formula One, almost all NASCAR Sprint Cup Series winners have been U.S. Americans, whereas attendees at Formula One races can enjoy 4-star hotels, expensive restaurants, suites, and grandstand seats. NASCAR fans tend to prefer an RV, eat barbecue, and drink beer. When Formula One announced that it would race again in the U.S. at the purpose-built track named Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, many were surprised. Other U.S. venues were under consideration to host the race. However, misperceptions of Texas as a state with cactus, men in cowboy hats, and armadillo were shown to be wrong. Austin's reputation as the live music capital of the world is just one indication of the city's culture of inclusiveness, sophistication, and willingness to embrace new experiences. Formula One held its inaugural race in Austin in 2012, and given its 10-year contract with Texas, racing is expected through 2022 and beyond. The awareness, flexibility, understanding, and a willingness to adapt are similarly essential when conducting business across different world cultures. If you have ever traveled to China, India, Japan, or any of the other Asian countries explored in this book, you will appreciate how important it is to travel with an open mind, not to expect that domestic business practices are understood elsewhere. Where there are cultural differences, there is the potential for misunderstanding. That is why the overarching question at the heart of this book is, what do I need to know, think, and do to build trust, inspire respect, and create long-lasting business relationships in Asia? A Journey of Passion. As the daughter of a military officer, Sharon has spent her life exposed to different cultures. She's a real third-culture kid. Her passion for helping others professionally benefit from enhanced cross-cultural relationships began in 1989, the year she graduated from law school. After spending a month that summer experiencing China, Hong Kong, and Thailand with a fellow summer associate, she wrote in her journal, "I need to be doing something where I'm traveling and working with people in different cultures." Nevertheless, back in the U.S., Sharon did what most recently graduated lawyers do. She joined a law firm. 2 years later, she began working for the Texas Attorney General's office, which reignited her fascination with the way different mindsets and priorities impact how people communicate and resolve conflict. By early 2008, Sharon had visited all 7 continents and over 30 countries, and had gained a professional understanding of how to bridge the gap between people from different cultures. Taking a 2-year sabbatical from the law, she visited the Czech Republic and immersed herself in family and culture. Then she embarked on a series of courses at the Protocol School of Washington to emerge as a newly minted corporate etiquette and international protocol consultant and a protocol officer. From etiquette to intercultural exchange. For the first 6 years after launching Protocol and Etiquette worldwide, Sharon was influenced by experts in the field of international etiquette and intercultural awareness. What she found was that her clients wanted more than third-hand advice. They were hungry for realistic, practical, and implementable guidance that would enable them to be more successful in our globalized economy. They wanted to hear Sharon's experiences and stories. In 2012, the City of Austin asked Sharon to present on cross-cultural awareness and readiness for the inaugural Formula One races. Her interest in the research of social psychologist Gert Hofstede and his son Herta Jan, as well as that of cross-communication consultants Fons Trompenaars and Charles Hampden Turner, deepened. Sharon's lifelong cross-cultural experience, training, and research have been funneled into this book. From our great personal love of Asia, and in light of the increased interest worldwide in doing business across that continent, we chose to focus this book on Asia. By crafting material that engages, educates, and entertains, we intend to take you on a personally fulfilling journey. A questioning framework. As the 18th century French philosopher Voltaire said, "Judge a man by his questions rather than his answers." After interviewing over 100 international professionals for this book, we noticed a pattern emerging. 8 core questions whose answers were essential in attracting and building the relationships upon which today's successful businesses depend. Having researched many of the models offered by cultural gurus such as Edward Hall, Florence Kluckhohn, Fred Strootbeck, Gert Hofstede, Fons Trompenaars, and Charles Hampden Turner, George Simons, Janet Bennett, and Milton Bennett, we found these 8 questions reflect topics vitally important for culturally aware business people. Why these Asian countries? To counter the desire to cover every country as if they were equally important to U.S. business interests, Sharon engaged the global intelligence firm Stratfor, asking them to produce a report on U.S.-American business travel to Asia in order to identify the current and future top-ranking countries for U.S. investment and travel. 6 countries, China, Hong Kong, Japan, India, South Korea, and Taiwan, accounted for over 70% of all U.S. business travel to Asia, and represented the top U.S. regional trade partners, as well as key destinations for U.S. investment. According to Stratfor, business travel to these countries, with the possible exception of Taiwan, is not expected to decline significantly over the next 2 decades. However, we also wanted to include countries that were likely to emerge as increasingly important destinations for U.S. business travelers over the next 20 years. Among these top-ranking countries are Singapore, the Philippines, and Malaysia. Finally, it was Sharon's personal fascination with the mysterious Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, which led to our inclusion of that country here. How this book is structured. This book opens with an overview on culture, which explains why cultural awareness is important to establishing successful relationships, followed by an introduction to our 8-question framework. For all who seek an understanding of the United States, in addition to the 10 Asian countries, we have included a chapter on U.S. culture. U.S. readers will gain a better self-awareness and understanding of their own culture. Overview of concepts and terms offers an alphabetical collection of key concepts. Please contact Sharon at sharonschweitzer.com with your suggestions and insights for improving this list. Each of the 10 country chapters that follow help expand your knowledge through the 8-question framework. Topics in these chapters include a brief historical overview, the names of heroes and sports figures, an explanation of etiquette and protocol, insider tips on socializing, fiscal calendars, and a list of important holidays. There's also a quiz in each chapter, together with a self-awareness profile. Self-awareness profiles. This simple exercise prompts you to self-identify where you currently stand on topics related to the 8-question framework. This visual comparison will help you discover your current mindset and behavior to help develop more robust business relationships in each country. You will find these graphics after the 8-question section and the cultural summary within each country chapter. We suggest photocopying the graphics or using a pencil within the book so that you can see over time how you have adjusted your mindset. Here is an example concerning formality within Japanese business. Example: how formal do the Japanese tend to be in business? Note, numbers set in bold indicate the prevailing cultural preference. The scale reads 1 to 6, with 1 being very informal and 6 being highly formal. If you fall within the range of 5 or 6 on this continuum, you will likely easily adapt to Japanese formalities within business. If you are someone more comfortable with showing emotion in business dealings, expressing strongly held opinions, and acting assertively with others, you may need to consider seeking intercultural training. Business is relationships. Regardless of home country, human beings share a common desire to relate. In their work identifying the universal attributes called strengths, the Gallup organization found that out of the 34 personal themes described by the Strengths Finder assessment tool, the top 5 were common internationally: achiever, learner, relator, responsibility, and strategic. The placement of these themes in the top 5 differed slightly according to whether it is U.S. or international data. But whether we're from Baltimore or Bangalore, San Francisco or Shanghai, achieving, learning, and relating appear to be primary concerns for us all. Regardless of the industry, then, we are all in the relationship business. Understanding this is even more salient when operating abroad. As Professor Christine Uber-Gross points out, personal relationships matter in Asian business, in contrast to their lesser role in U.S. business. As a result, U.S. managers do not always understand the need to establish trust and build business relationships with Asian partners and clients. From theory to practice. Prior to the launch of the inaugural Formula One U.S. Grand Prix at Austin's New Circuit of the Americas, Sharon was asked to write a series of articles and to conduct workshops on international protocol and etiquette to help prepare Austin's business community for welcoming international visitors. While speaking privately with various attendees, Sharon shared the following story to illustrate how intercultural respect and courtesy play a huge role in establishing long-lasting business relationships. Some years ago, on a tour of American cities, a Chinese delegation visited Austin. On the final night of their stay, after attending well-organized business and government events around the city, the delegates were treated to a banquet featuring Texas barbecue at a real estate broker's private residence. Each delegate received individually wrapped gifts of memorabilia unique to Texas. The organizers even supplied slippers so everyone could remove their shoes before entering the private residence if desired. Everything went smoothly, and the delegation traveled to the next stop on their national tour. Their next experience was quite different, however. On one occasion, the Chinese delegation waited 30 minutes before someone realized they were in the wrong downtown high-rise. They'd ended up next door. The delegates were not as impressed as they had been in Austin. When the Chinese returned home, they invited the Austin real estate host to make presentations and talks in China. These opportunities have subsequently boosted her business internationally. While Robert Burns wrote in Scottish dialect, fellow Scot Liz has anglicized this quote from one of his poems to make it more understandable. "Oh, would some power the gift to give us, to see ourselves as others see us." With that in mind, the chapters that follow help you learn about the values held by your Asian clients and partners, but they also encourage you to view U.S. cultural values in a new way. With a willingness to adapt, this material can help you develop strong, long-lasting business relationships for powerful, mutual benefit. 1. A question of culture. When we marry, most of us discover that our spouse's family has a different set of expectations, values, and beliefs, ranging from broad topics, such as boundaries, to specific subjects, such as shared holidays. Invariably, these are different from the way we were raised. If we can reconcile our own values with those of our new extended family, we avoid the potential culture clash. If not, and things escalate, the end result can be unpleasant. The same holds true in business. J.B., not his real name, is a factory owner in Chennai in southern India, whose mid-sized business produces revenues of around $250 million a year and has 2 joint venture agreements. One relationship with a German company has happily lasted 18 years. The other with a U.S. company he wants to draw to a close because of their less than desirable approach to doing business. For example, on one occasion, J.B. wanted to spend $5,000 to manufacture a tool for a particular project and was questioned at length by his U.S. partners as to why he didn't just buy the tool from vendors overseas. J.B. responded that these vendors did not allow him to purchase a single item, only items in bulk, which he felt was wasteful and would incur unnecessary shipping costs. Overall, it was going to be considerably less expensive to make the part. After further laborious discussions, his U.S. partners reluctantly agreed. In contrast, J.B.'s experience with the Germans is such that, if I make a request, they will ask me if that is the best solution in my opinion. If I say yes, they trust my expertise. Why would J.B.'s experience with the Germans be so different than the experience with his U.S. partners? In short, cultural differences. But before examining this example further, let's explore what we mean by the word culture. We use the word culture in many different contexts, including countries, organizations, and groups. And we talk about cultural misunderstandings, cultural clashes, cultural fit, and even culture shock. However, books and articles focused on cultural topics often neglect to define the term. Perhaps that is not surprising, considering the complexities involved in explaining culture. Culture was originally an agricultural term used in the Middle Ages, stemming from the Latin word cultura, meaning the care, cultivation, or honoring of the land. We still talk about cultivating plants, but since the early 19th century, culture also became associated with the beliefs, values, and customs of different civilizations. Culture is complex and hard to pin down with a single definition because it encompasses many sub-components. Culture. Culture is the accumulation of life experiences spanning generations. Shaida Hodge, Global Smarts. One place to start is to compare culture with similar but not synonymous concepts, such as identity, nationhood, values, and norms. Renowned intercultural researcher and the author of numerous books on this topic, including Culture's Consequences, Hert Hofstede advises that culture is distinct from identity. Your identity has more to do with where and with whom you belong, as in national identity, or your identity within a particular group. Culture, on the other hand, is concerned with the collective programming of the mind that distinguishes the members of one group or category of people from another. In that regard, Hofstede considers culture to consist of the unwritten rules of the social game. These are the rules we learn from observing what goes on in our specific environment, together with the learning we get from others, rather than something we are born knowing, such as the human propensity for smiling or the fear of death, which are innate across all races. Some of the earliest influences of Hofstede and others stemmed from research conducted by cultural anthropologists. For example, Florence Kluckhohn and Fred Stroetbeck's 1961 value orientations theory postulated 6 different types of beliefs, influences, and relationships. Kluckhohn and Stroetbeck differentiated them according to the following dimensions. Relationship with nature, especially the need for control. Social structure, whether focused mostly on individuals or groups. Appropriate goals, being or doing. Time, past, traditions. Present, current circumstances, or future. Desires and or goals. Basis of human nature, good or evil. Conception of space, public or private. These anthropologically sound dimensions speak to all forms of community, including our business lives. Culture is not synonymous with nationhood for the simple reason that just under 200 countries exist in the world today, whereas according to Richard Lewis, there are some 700 national and regional cultures. Additionally, culture is not synonymous with concepts such as norms and values. It encompasses them. Pattern interrupt. Many Japanese executives are reserved, polite, quiet, and rarely display emotion. Somewhere there is probably a loud, boisterous, gesticulating Japanese manager who is as emotional and imperious as any prima donna. Just because we haven't met him or her doesn't mean that no such person exists. Terry Morrison and Wayne A. Conaway. Many commentators, including Fons Trompenaars, Hert Hofstede, George Simons, and Shaida Hodge, have represented culture as a multi-layered model. Depictions of these representations are either in the form of concentric circles or an iceberg, and highlight the difference between the cultural components of which we are aware and those that are subconscious. Think of a peach with 3 layers: the outer skin, the flesh, and the innermost pit or stone. This approach aligns with Edward T. Hall's 3 levels of culture, outlined in The Dance of Life, the other dimension of time. In the peach example, the outer skin represents the conscious or visible manifestations of culture, including literature, food, music, fashion, and art. These are often visible, such as the kimono in Japan, the sari in India, or the hijab in Malaysia. The middle layer, or flesh, comprises norms and values that are often unknown to people outside that culture. Examples include authority, consensus, family, modesty, personal space, and spirituality. The innermost pit or stone represents the hidden or subconscious assumptions held by a culture about how the world works, such as fatalism, environmental control, and notions of time. Consider the analogy of a goldfish in water. That medium is pivotal to the way the goldfish lives and breathes until the water evaporates or the bowl breaks. This is similar to the culture shock that many experience when moving to a different culture. Let's now consider the less than desirable relationship JB has with his U.S. partners and contrast that with his more satisfactory dealings with the German company. How can this be when you would expect there to be greater similarities between Germany and the U.S. than between Germany and India? Many factors are involved in business dealings with culturally different partners. One model was developed by Gert Hofstede, who, having analyzed cultural differences since the late 1960s, identified 6 dimensions of national cultures, 3 of which are especially pertinent to the JB example. The first of these is what Hofstede identified as uncertainty avoidance, meaning the degree to which a culture is tolerant of ambiguity and feels comfortable with unknown situations. Ironically, the United States and India are closer to each other in terms of their comfort with uncertainty than either of them is with the Germans. However, as Hofstede explains, the Germans compensate for their desire to avoid uncertainty by relying on others' expertise. This aligns well with the Indian preference for power, another of Hofstede's dimensions. In India, power is unequally distributed throughout the culture, with the boss, JB, being the final decision-maker. When the Germans asked JB if his suggestion was the best option, and he confirmed that it was, they accepted his opinion. The Germans were presumably able to reduce their level of uncertainty by giving credence to the power differential that JB is afforded in Indian society as the head of the company. The third relevant dimension to mention here is that of short-term or long-term orientation. Germany and the U.S. are both examples of the Western tendency for seeking results in the short term. In comparison, many Asian cultures, such as India, prefer to take a long-term view. As one Indian executive explained, by taking the long view, Indians are apt to make allowances for the fact that not everything is always going to go to plan. That includes the fact that early on in a relationship there are bound to be hiccups. This is only to be expected, given the complexity of human interactions. Yet it's remarkable to us how Americans hold to the belief in one truth, whereas we Indians know there to be many truths, each one applicable according to the context in which it is applied. Again, why is there more alignment between the Indian and German executives, and more friction between JB and his U.S. partners? Perhaps because of JB's industry experience and expertise, the Germans received assurance that their short-term needs would be met. Trust is highly relevant here. Former President Ronald Reagan's comment, "Trust but verify," is anathema to Indians, who would not consider the need for verification to be indicative of trust. Why this? Why now? Cultural considerations vary geographically in many countries. In the U.S., for example, conducting business in the Midwest is different from doing so in Texas or California. As the former CEO of Coca-Cola, Doug Ivester, said, "As economic borders come down, cultural barriers go up, presenting new challenges and opportunities in business." According to Athanasios Vamvakidis, an economist in the International Monetary Fund's Asia and Pacific Department, alongside the globalization process, countries have been increasing their regional economic links through regional trade agreements. As economic borders have come down, what about the cultural barriers? The authors of Getting China and India Right, Anil G. Gupta and Haiyan Wang, stated that any organization looking to make progress in these markets needs to embrace the kind of long-term orientation typical of India and China, and rarely found in Western countries. According to Gupta and Wang, most companies will find that their existing knowledge about how to succeed in other markets teaches them little about how to succeed in China and India if they want to aim for market leadership rather than merely skimming the cream at the top. They will need to engage in considerable learning from scratch. With that in mind, you are about to discover a little more about the ways U.S. culture compares with Asian cultures. What you find out will create a baseline for understanding the different perspectives among these cultures and help create deeper, more lasting, and more trusted relationships. After all, in order to know how to relate to other cultures, you first need to know where you are standing. Who?
Sample complete. Ready to continue?